You've probably seen this guy somewhere in the last month. This is from the China GQ Heatstroke photo shoot, photographed by Wintem. This was one of the many photos that were a part of the photo shoot and honestly has taken the internet by storm. People left and right have been taking this photograph and recreating it. A lot of them not just by means of photography, but by means of illustration. So not only do you have people actually taking photos of themselves recreating this photo shoot, but also people drawing their characters that they love and admire in this pose as well. As always, I'm late to the trend, but it's for a good reason. I went ahead and looked up some stuff about Wintem, mostly his photography. Luckily enough, we live in a world where we could pull up an Instagram profile and see all the wonderful things that he creates. I spent a while scrolling through his page and really taking in every single photo that I found interesting. Each one is absolutely beautiful. I can't explain it any other way. Each one has such a unique taste to it, even if it's from the same photo shoot. You can tell he really knows his models, puts them in these clothings that he knows they can carry very well, and isn't afraid to take an artistic approach when it comes to the positioning, or the editing, or the colors that he uses for his photo shoots. He knows how to play with their silhouettes and angle these cameras beautifully enough to really show not only the clothing, but the model behind it and the personality that they carry along with each and every photograph. It's genuinely incredible, to say the least. So, when this photo was popping around the internet, I didn't really take any interest into it, I'll be honest. And it's because I don't think it's meant to be an artistic photo. That one in specific, anyway. The entire shoot is gorgeous, where you have a bunch of these poses, and you can really feel how much fun every single model is having during this photo shoot, and is taking things to almost like an extreme, or to a degree where it still has an artistic flavor. All this while still carrying the theme of Heatstroke. Each and every photo has some kind of idea behind the theme going on. Little accessories like carrying a pool floaty so it insinuates that he's going to take a swim, versus having something to drink to try and cool off, or eating some ice cream so this way you can keep your temperature down, all of which have a wonderful kind of surrounding theme of the Heatstroke. So many more of the photos on this photo shoot were just absolutely spectacular, and them versus the one that got super popularized, I can't help but think, why did it get popularized? It honestly could be something way simpler than I think. So what I did is picked 4 photos from this photo shoot, including the one that I don't particularly like because I think it's just a test shot, and decided to redraw them myself. So hi everyone, I'm Ward and welcome to my channel Wardrawsalot, and this week I'm going to be drawing various poses from the China GQ Heatstroke photo shoot. Now, let me say, I'm not trying to sound pretentious in the slightest, okay? I'm like the exact opposite of that. But I really wanted to look at the photography that was in front of me and kind of dissect it as much as I could, and appreciate it as much as I could as well. This shot in particular, that became super popular everywhere, I feel like could be for several reasons, and they honestly make sense. Let's start off with possible reasoning number 1. The model is super attractive, right? Most of the time when somebody is, gorgeous, people are gonna like what they see in front of them and want to recreate it. Many artists have their muse and have redrawn them many a time, whether it's from the model themselves or taking inspiration from that photo or model and then recreating it. And I'm no stranger to that. As you can see here, this is the same character over and over and over again because it's my OC Nikki. He's my muse. So I'm going to take my muse and put them in the poses that I found extremely interesting or enticing or really thought-provoking, because it's 2 things mashed together in one that truly make me happy as an artist. So although some people redrew him, specifically him, that model, and remade the photo, a lot of them did take their OCs or characters they love and use that pose for them because they found it enticing. Another reason I think is that this photo in particular is very digestible, right? It's not too artistic and it's not too out there, so it seems very grabbable to everybody. Not everybody is, an art fart. Not everybody likes to dissect something. Some people just like to take it in. Even artists do. I do that all the time. Sometimes you don't need to dissect a piece to appreciate it. You just have to look at it and like what you see in front of you. The whole thing behind it is that it invokes an emotion, and if a lot of people feel some kind of emotion from staring at this particular image, then that's what they feel. I didn't necessarily feel anything, but that's because I'm too analytic sometimes. Although I love art and I'd love to draw and I love the process, my brain isn't only an artist brain. Sadly, a lot of it is very logical or mathematical, so I tend to be too analytical. So looking at a photo like this and not seeing anything in particularly incredible, I wonder why, but sometimes I don't need to wonder why. Sometimes I can just take it in, and I have to remember that a lot of the time. Another thing that I thought of when I was looking at this photo and thinking why could it possibly be so big is just for the sole factor that it's reachable, especially to many other artists. It's not that necessarily difficult to draw. It's a nice position and the lighting is great, and it really does kind of bring in what the photo shoot is kind of going for, even though it's just what I feel a test shot. And I definitely feel it's a test shot because the way the position of the model is and the way he's looking over holding his headphones, it kind of looks like he's trying to hear directions from the photographer, and it looks like it's a test shot just for the sole fact that the positioning and the angles and everything about it isn't like all the other ones. Oftentimes, believe it or not, a lot of the test shots are the shots that make it through to these big magazines, and it's because it's the model in their most natural habitat. It's them just being them. So sometimes it not being such a artsy-fartsy thing can be a good thing. And kind of shows that you don't have to be so specific or so storytelling to create a good image or a good piece of art. It just can exist as it is. Now, through that first image, I had to learn to appreciate it. So I reasoned it out and I wondered what it was for and how it came to be and etc, etc. But there were many more photos from the photo shoot that I appreciated and loved right off the bat and wanted to draw those because those were the ones that enticed me. Now, although this entire photo shoot had more than just this one model, I could tell that this one model really was the favorite of the group, and that doesn't necessarily make it a bad thing. Sometimes what I feel definitely is that if you have a muse and it's kind of pushing the photo shoot a certain way, you're gonna go towards it. Just like how if I'm drawing my characters and if the character looks a certain way, I'm going to move towards it. And it definitely looked like this model had more, I guess, close-up pictures than the other ones did, at least from the ones that I found, and I could tell that this was like the main muse of the entire photo shoot. He probably fit the vibe and the look that the photographer wanted and really was able to pull through with a bunch of these poses and facial expressions that they were going for this entire photo shoot. Take this drawing here for example. This is the original photo that I based it off of and recreated with my own character. Really take a look at it for a second and take in what's going on. There are so many elements that go into photography that it's insane. It really is. When I'm drawing and I'm thinking about how many steps it takes for me to draw, I think about how I can do it in steps. Photography isn't in steps, it's all in one action, and all has to be executed at the exact moment to get the right photo that you're gonna get. The amount of control this model has that I've seen, not from just this photo, but from other ones, is honestly fantastic. A lot of models honestly have to have a lot of control, mostly because if they're not doing it right the first time, they can just go grab another model, which sucks to say, but that's the truth. So a lot of them have to get used to these kinds of conditions and all of these things to try and get the perfect photograph for the artist or the photographer. In this photo, you can tell that there's a lemon in his hand, and it's not just sitting there, he has to bite into it. So he's digging into the entire lemon with his teeth and pulling it out, and he's trying to keep control of his face as much as he can, but it's obviously not an easy thing to do. His expression is obviously soured from the lemon in his hand, but at the same time, it can't look too ugly in the facial expression. It still has to carry some kind of pretty ugly to it. So as he's biting into this lemon, not only is that happening, but if you can see from the original photo, a lot of these hair strands are going upwards, which means there's a fan directly hitting his face, so his hair is moving upwards, and it looks like kind of like the fur on his head is in a kind of movement motion as well, which kind of solidifies the fact that there is a fan there. And so is the bow. The bow is kind of leaning over, almost like it is kind of like floating to a degree, right? But you have all those elements going on at once, and it looks like there's a good amount of water on him to make sure it is glistening from his body. There's probably different makeup elements that go with it to make sure that there's some kind of shine, but you can really tell like all of these elements are going on at the exact same time to get this perfect photo. Down to the little juices that come off of the lemon, that means that within that moment of him biting and ripping it away from his mouth, that's when the photo was taken to create such an incredible image with such little like lenient time in between everything is incredible. That's also why I think there are like settings on cameras to capture a bunch of photos within one go. I mean, we have that on our own like phones. For example, the iPhone, you can set it to where it can take burst photos, like 10 photos at a time. These photos on these cameras probably have somewhere up to maybe anywhere between 50 to 100 photos that it could capture within that time frame. And it's incredible that they have to sift through every single one to find the one that invokes something within somebody. It's honestly like crazy. Every art form is so beautiful to its own degree and has such like little nuances that create what it is. I only hoped I could like capture it properly. I do know that I have problems with expressing emotions on characters, and it's mostly because I do like the simple closed mouth without any expression kind of face going on, but it's something that I have to practice more. But I do feel like I captured it for the most part when it comes to this drawing, the emotion that was being pushed in. I do feel like, of course, the original photograph is significantly better because it's an actual muse and it's a person who knows how to kind of control their face and their body very well, so it obviously looks significantly better in the photo, but I do think I captured it fairly well in comparison. Now, like I stated before, that one photo that got popularized isn't, my cup of tea, and I originally looked at the trend and I was like, oh, this is cool, like a lot of people are recreating it, but it wasn't until I saw this picture that I was like, wow, I gotta draw this. This was the picture for this photo shoot for me that I was like completely enamored by. I was like, oh my god, this looks incredible. This for me was the picture that made me even bother diving into the photo shoot, and it was because it was so beautiful to me. From the positioning that the model is doing, to the perspective, to the little water droplets that are kind of splattered across the photo, it showed to me how much effort or like how much work was put into creating such a pose like this. And of course immediately I tried to like dissect it. I looked at it and I was like, all of these elements put together just like before, the fan, the kind of shine that's hitting in the right spots, and the water droplets, meaning that in order for him to create this photo, they had to splash water on him, and that's not like easy to do. I don't know about you guys, but whenever water comes my way, I don't know why, but I like wince. Like if water hits me, I immediately like I flinch, and I'm like, that's kind of crazy because there's probably an entire bucket of water that was splashed onto him, and he stayed in the same position and, you know, got that perfect photo. And the lighting is absolutely incredible. You can tell where the water hits his, you know, face, his shirt, down to the, I think that's a skirt that he's wearing, I'm almost positive. And how that kind of looks all together. It just like, that was the photo I was like, oh my god, this is like gorgeous. So of course that's the one I put not only the most effort into, but it was honestly the hardest one for me to do. And it's mostly because of the very subtle perspective that's going on. Because if we look at the photo, it's definitely taken from a lower angle, which is why his hand looks so massive when it's up against the skirt or the pants or something. I'm pretty sure it's a skirt though. But his hand looks so massive, and then the way it kind of retracts back towards the shoulder and the head, you can see that it kind of tapers outwards towards you the closer it gets to the bottom. So perspective for me is honestly something difficult. It's something that I'm still practicing and I'm trying my hardest to capture, but I really pushed myself and tried to get the photo exactly how it was when we see it in the actual photo. So it's something that, although I'm practicing, I'm still trying to capture correctly, and eventually I'll get the hang of it, of course. That's just something that's going to come with time and practice and a lot of skill and effort, but I do think I still executed it pretty well. Another thing I think that really called me into this photo was the clothing. I'm not somebody who particularly, this is going to be strange to explain and it's going to make no sense, but just try and follow along. When it comes to having a completely shirtless person and drawing them, I'm never really that much of a fan of it. I don't know why. Something about it is never like the first thing I gravitate towards. I'll draw it, I definitely will, and I like drawing it, but for me to like love it completely, it's not really something I, you know, go towards often. But when there is something like this, something almost like a see-through fabric or something that covers very minimally, that's when the neurons in my brain activate. The synapses start happening and electricity start running through my brain, okay? That's when everything come together and the monkey go ooh, ooh ah, ah inside my brain. And I'm like, this is the thing that I like. So because this is more of the subject matter that I like, that's the reason why I was like, oh my god, this is for me. This was made for me. So I definitely took advantage of that in drawing it, and you can tell, I feel, that when I was drawing this, that I put a lot more effort and I liked it a lot more, and that's why I think it came out so nicely, even though the other ones did come out pretty nice too, but this one I feel has definitely a different feel to it in comparison to the others. Of course, like I stated before, my perspective is pretty off, and honestly, like, it sucks, but I learned a lesson long ago, okay? I was like, if I like something the way it's drawn already, leave it alone. And I leave it alone because whenever I would try and go back in and fix it, I would fuck it up so badly and I would regret my decision. So after a while, I just learned. I was like, leave it the way it is. Leave it the way it is and let it work and let it rock the way it is, because otherwise it's going to end up like Dookie, and I was not about to let that happen with this drawing in particular. I left that alone and I'm so happy I did. Oh my god, because I love the outcome, and although it's not perfect, it's me drawing something, and the imperfection proves it's from me. That's what I like about art, is that it's very specific to you, and through its little imperfections you can see who drew it and how they draw it and how their mind works, and it's honestly an incredible thing that I love to see. So whenever somebody makes a mistake in their art, it's not necessarily a bad thing, especially in my eyes. In fact, it's something interesting because it kind of brings the humanity into the art, you know? Now we finally come to the last photo of the bunch. And I really took an interest in this one, mostly because of the texture of it. this really big sweater that is obviously like knitted, and how many different colors it's got going on, and how it's tied at the front, I honestly think is very interesting. I think it has something to do with how I spoke earlier, that he plays with the model silhouettes very well. This model in particular is very top heavy, so he's got very broad shoulders and a very narrow waist, and he's got like, you know, a bigger chest. So I feel like by playing with this sweater and how it sits on his body, it really kind of like emphasized how this character, oh my god, how this person, not character, I was looking at the screen looking at my character, but how this person looks. So I really feel like, again, he knows how to play with the silhouettes of his models and uses it to his advantage for these photos, which is something always beautiful to see because every body is different. Everyone has a different kind of dimension when it comes to their body types, and everyone looks better with certain clothes on versus other clothes on. It just makes sense to kind of play along with how the model looks. Like, whenever I get dressed, for example, I recently switched to more of a flare type of pants, and the reason being is because I'm very top heavy and my legs are very toned in comparison. So whenever I would wear tighter pants, it would look like, you know, like a fucking pinball. So I decided to wear flare out pants to kind of even out my silhouette better, and it played with the shape of myself much better. So honestly, everybody has a kind of certain shape to them, and there's always a way to work with it. I also like the little accessory of the hat on top, which is, you know, very funny. This sweater is very, like, opposite of what Heatstroke would be. If you're very warm or very hot, you wouldn't want this big bulky sweater, which is why they kind of tied it up at the front to kind of let some air in. And on top, another thing that matches the texture would be the hat that's on his head. It's all kind of coming together, and it would be so, you know, opposite as to what something like a Heatstroke would be, that it kind of almost makes sense. And you have a little accessory of the ice cream, of him just having it in his mouth, keeping himself cool in the meantime. It honestly is it's so cool to see how people take in different themes and then execute them properly to their advantage. Now, of all of them, if I could rank them all to which ones I like the most to least, the one I liked the most, of course, or number one, would be the one with the kind of see-through top. Number two would be with the big fur headpiece. Number three would be with the sweater. And number four still would be the one with the headphones and him pulling it away from his head. I liked all of them to their own degree, and honestly, after seeing this trend, I made sure to tell myself from now on, whenever a trend happens, research the artist, see what they're doing and what their art is like, and see if I can appreciate something outside of what's popularized, and honestly, I do. Artists are so much more than the one thing that everybody gravitates towards. We have so many more pieces in our repertoire, and they all define us in a different way. Whether they're older pieces or newer ones, they all honestly have a different taste and flavor to them, and each one should be loved and shown. So yeah, thanks for watching everyone, and remember, I love you. Bye!